Years had gone by and the once tiny little girls had blossomed into teenagers, each with her own distinct beauty, personality and flair. Evelyn, the firstborn, had turned 17 and now in SS3. Tall, soft-spoken, brilliant, and the peacemaker amongst the sisters. Her eyes held both wisdom and innocence. She bore the weight of a childhood that navigated the unending love of a father to his daughter and the complexity of an unspoken rivalry between her and her stepmother, who saw her late mother's image in her eyes and as a result was unapologetically spiteful and mean towards her. Dorinda, the second child, 16 and in SS2, the ethereal beauty of the family and the boys' magnet. Though still a teenager, Dorinda had grown curves in all the right places. Very confident and oozed a sophisticated aura. Dorinda was a definition of fancy and couldn't be bothered about anybody else but herself. Girls her age envied her a lot, but she craved adoration. Tabitha is particularly pleased about Dorinda's looks, even more than Dorinda herself. She saw a gold mine where everyone else saw a pretty spoiled teenager. Azomta, the tall child, 14, very intelligent and mysteriously quiet. Her presence always went unnoticed. Her position as a second child made her invisible, more like a shadow. She often felt like an outsider who lacked attention in the home she belonged, attention that her sister Dorinda got unsolicited from both home and outside. Azomta yearned for approval from her parents, most especially her mother Tabitha, who most times seemed impatient with her. Azomta, though with a defiant attitude of her own, was always in her immediate elder sister's shadow. For the most part, she wished people noticed her the way they noticed Dorinda. Kendra, 13 and the baby of the house, a hurricane. Though still very young, Kendra was a child who already embodied mixture of rebellion and freedom. She had an overly fearless and larger-than-life personality. She got into fights a lot and David was always worried for her. Kendra was most closest and had a soft spot for her elder sister Evelyn, who practically looked out for her the most while her mother was too engrossed with work. Although David tried his best to show equal love to all his four daughters, Tabitha displayed an unhidden show of preference towards Dorinda, who she was more patient with. She dismissed Azomta a lot and spanked Kendra over her misbehaviors. Evelyn didn't exist to her, except for errands, chores, and nanny duties. Over the years, Tabitha's relentless pursuit for wealth had not yielded any major results, as she was still just a nurse receiving basic salary of a senior health worker. The frustration of her acclaimed lack of achievement was patent. She constantly yelled, lashed out at every slight provocation, and wore a perpetual frown. Tabitha had little care about monitoring and curtailing her daughter's shortcomings while they metamorphosed through stages in life. Her attention was tilted more towards work and making money to maintain the level of comfort she could afford. David couldn't give her the kind of life she envisioned. He was still in and out of odd jobs. She had given up on him long time ago, a love turned sour. He was just a worthless fading piece of art she could brandish as her husband when need be. The wife with the handsome husband, and nothing more. David, who was once the head of the household, now followed Tabitha's lead. She now wore the trousers and called the shots, the breadwinner and controller. She had divided the children's responsibilities between herself and David. Since David didn't have a job and could not afford to handle most responsibilities, Evelyn was solely David's responsibility. Her upkeep, school fees and necessary needs was all on David, while she, Tabitha, was going to cater to only her three daughters. She made it clear she was not going to slave for another woman's child while her father lounged away. David had to keep taking on odd jobs to raise money to at least handle Evelyn's fees and provide the little he could to help out in his household, thus deteriorating his health further. David's pride eroded. He watched the woman who had orchestrated their lives take over his existence and empire, handling it with reckless abandon while he could do nothing. Evelyn, though just 17, had already taken up the role of a caregiver in the house as Tabitha was often away at work. She cooked, cleaned, kept the house in order and helped Kendra with her schoolwork. Dorinda suffered the princess syndrome and doesn't lift a finger to help around the house, and nobody other than her parents dared to talk to her. Evelyn also prioritized her father's health. She always adhered to his meal plans, reminded him to take his medications, and accompanied him to doctor's appointments, things his wife Tabitha would never bother herself about. Evelyn was excelling so well in school. She was amongst the best students in her class and was the assistant head prefect in the whole school. Her teachers and principal loved her so much to the point she was given unhindered access to their offices. David was so proud of her and did his best to provide everything she needed to encourage her schoolwork. He also put her through subjects that were difficult for her. Her dream was to become a heart surgeon. All this displeased Tabitha, as Evelyn's academic prowess reminded her of Anna, who was equally very bright while they were at the university. In fact, Anna's result, which was released after her death, showed she would have graduated with an upper credit. Tabitha tried so many ways to plant discord in the hearts of her daughters towards Evelyn. On the day Evelyn was made head prefect, Kendra came home excitedly to announce the good news to her parents. David, filled with pride, hugged and congratulated Evelyn for her achievements. His pride was glaring. His first child was doing so great in all ramifications, in her academics, behavior and general conduct. Everyone, especially her school proprietors, sang her praise always, and this pleased David. He was confident that with the way Evelyn was going, she indeed was on a sure path to becoming a woman of great substance, and that alone was enough compensation for all he had been through. Tabitha showed no elation of Evelyn's achievement. She instead showered her daughter Dorinda with praises for winning a gift as the prettiest girl in the school. She went ahead to scold Kendra in secret for showing such excitement for Evelyn. She reminded that it was Dorinda and Azomta that were her sisters and not Evelyn. Tabitha also tasked Azomta to attend the position of the senior prefect when her time comes, seeing that she was the brightest of the three bunch. Azomta had always felt like the most ignored amongst her sisters. She yearned validation from people, especially her mother. She was only commended when she came home with good grades after every term. She had no friends to share her thoughts with. Her and her sister had contrasting personalities such that they hardly got along, and so she was most times to herself. Until she met and became friends with Eva, a new student in her class who had noticed how intelligent she was and had approached Azomta to help with her grades in mathematics. Azomta would gladly accept, as that was the first time anyone was asking to be her friend. Eva was a tomboyish girl that liked to display male mannerism. She wore oversized uniforms, played boys-dominated sports, and walked like a boy. Though this was strange to Azomta, she enjoyed the fun and excitement Eva's character ignited. This was the only time she had felt noticed, and she was ready to maintain the friendship. One day, Evelyn entered her father's room and met him going over old pictures of his family. Old friends, and amongst them were Anna's pictures. What was she like? Evelyn asked, sitting next to her father. David wore a genuine smile on his face as he replied, "I only knew her for less than 2 years, and I must tell you one fact. She was the best thing that ever happened in my life. I miss your mother every day, even more when I see her in you." Evelyn smirked. At the same time, she also felt sympathy for her father. She picked up an old family picture of David and his siblings. "You guys looked so happy together. What really happened?" Evelyn asked to know why they don't visit their cousins and uncles from his side of the family. David turned to her, his eyes heavy. He explained to her that he had done some things in the past that he wasn't proud of and was ashamed to visit them. "I am sure they would have forgiven you for whatever it was, father. We are so isolated from everyone. I would really like to meet my cousins and relatives someday." Evelyn urged her father to get in touch with his relatives so they can visit and get to know them. David was speechless. He knew Evelyn was right. He had missed his family so much, and it was time to take the bold step of welcoming them back into his life. His detachment from them was all Tabitha's doing, and it was time for him to take his stance, at least to have his own people by his side. "Dad, promise me you would reach out to them," Evelyn pressed on. David heaved and promised to work towards it. Tabitha, who had been standing at the doorpost and listening to the entire conversation, quietly walked away unnoticed. Eva was growing on Azomta, who was drawn to Eva's boyish and carefree personality. Azomta was always eager to do Eva's bidding and was even becoming conscious of her looks around Eva. All of a sudden, she would begin to sneak into Dorinda's things and apply subtle makeup before going to school so as to get Eva's attention. It was becoming an attraction that was beyond mere friendship. "Why did you use my makeup?" Dorinda had challenged Azomta one morning while they were about leaving for school. "I did not use your makeup," Azomta denied. Tabitha opened her bedroom door. She was dressed for work as she demanded to know why the girls were bickering. "Mommy, want Azomta to stop going through my things for the last time. I am always looking for my money," Dorinda requested. "I don't take your money. You also tell mommy how you get money to always buy makeup and clothes. Are you working?" Azomta retorted. Tabitha turned to pick up her car keys from the table, ignoring the girls' squabble. "I don't want to get to the car before any of you," she said as she walked briskly out of the apartment. Evelyn quickly helped Kendra wear her school bag and waved at her sisters as they exited the house. She always stayed back to finish her morning chores, and Tabitha never waited for her. She would usually join a public transport to school when she was done. Evelyn left to rush up with her chores as she wondered a bit about how Tabitha reacted trivially towards the girls' behavior that morning. Both girls were too young to be using makeup, she thought, and in truth, Dorinda had access to money and lots of fancy things, and no one had bothered to ask her how she got money to buy the stuff she owned. After school that day, Tabitha was running late to pick the girls from school as usual. Azomta had gone to the field to watch Eva's football practice. Evelyn was monitoring some defaulting junior students she had asked to move some boxes to the principal's office as their punishment. She led the students through the corridor of some empty class blocks. Unknowing to her, in one of the empty class was 13-year-old Kendra and her friends hiding. The naughty pairs had gathered in an empty classroom after school hours to learn how to smoke cigarettes that Kendra had bought from the money she stole from Dorinda. Evelyn led the defaulting student to the principal's office and asked them to remain outside. She needed to check that the principal's office was cleared. She walked in, and while trying to open the office door, she heard some whispering noise coming out from the adjacent room, which was the vice principal's office. Evelyn wondered why, because it was closing hours and the principal and vice principal were usually out of the school at that hour. Suspecting something was fishy, Evelyn tiptoed to the office door. There she heard familiar voices and paused to listen. "I know you gave me money before, but someone stole it from my bag this morning. I want more money," the female voice beckoned. "Okay, I will give you money. Is that all?" a male voice responded. "Also, talk to Mr. Victor to pass me," the female voice added. The male voice adhered, and the conversation progressed into kisses. Evelyn pushed the office door open. Her eyes and mouth widened in shock. She had stumbled into the female student and the vice principal, pants down and in a compromising position. "Oh my God, Dorinda!" she screamed. Alright guys, we've come to the end of today's episode of Delilah. Hope you enjoyed watching and listening. Please don't forget to join us next week for our next part of Delilah on Telltale with Lilibet. And also don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, share, like and comment. Thank you very much for joining us today, and do have a nice day. Bye bye.